Hey, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is the Rolling Pin Podcast, Gary Foods, and I have a special guest with me today to talk about prices um, in detail surrounding sports cards, but then we're going to take it to art. I have Paul with me today. I met Paul on Twitter um, through the supportive card community that has been, supporting my collection and just watching everybody else collect. And I'm sure you've all known each other before I even jumped into the space. So thank you for having me and welcoming me into that space on Twitter. And thank you for jumping on the Rolling Pin podcast, Paul. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure, Gary. I've been watching your show and I quite enjoy it. And welcome to the community. Some of the stuff you've been doing has been fantastic.
Thank you.
As a community, there's a bunch of us that have been around, and we're talking wrestling cards in particular, the wrestling trading card hobby. When you say sports cards, I have a peripheral knowledge of some of that stuff, but really what we're is,
No,
is
yeah, I got you.
is wrestling cards in particular, of which myself and a handful of other guys, we've been sort of carrying the mantle of the torch over the past 20 years. But really, all of us kind of congregated about a year ago. Like we with Twitter and with Zoom, when the pandemic started, of course, prices across the board just started to shoot, and then a lot of us with time on our hands started providing content as you've been doing. And I think it's just been a sum total of all of our efforts have really brought a lot of attention to the hobby. We've seen prices going up. We know that eBay sales are up 500% year on year. And it's all to do with stuff like what you're doing, my brother, just getting good information, timely information, free information out to people. And that's what we do as well.
Thank you, thank you. And I actually started this podcast due to COVID. I thought we were going to be trapped inside, so
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I need to start something and actually engage with people in a digital way if I can't engage with people in the
Well, you
physical
know
way.
what, man? I'm still stuck inside because I'm in Toronto and we're still in a lockdown up here. In fact, we had a stay-at-home order last weekend where they actually
Mm,
wanted to shut down the playgrounds and you'd have to sort of explain where you're going when you go out. We sort of they dialed that back. It's not as draconian, but things are bad up here. It's not India bad, but we're
right.
behind. We're behind on vaccines, so
Wow.
we're not out of anything yet up here. So I still got a lot of free time on my hands. I can't do my day job really because I got to go out and mix with people.
I
So I
understand.
spend a lot of time, doing this kind
Yeah.
of thing, working on my site, getting prices up, updating, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I hope you are safe up in Canada. Shout out to Canada. I hope everybody is safe up in that country.
Yeah,
I know
we're good. We're just behind on the vaccine, so it's going to take us a bit to get to the other side of this thing.
I got you. Yeah. So jumping into what really led me into wanting to reach out to you is the title that you operate under, which is rice was it's wrestling card price guides. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's right. And where
Okay.
that came from, Gary, is that was a book that I put out in 2010. So like 10 years ago, it was a collaboration between myself and another dude by the name of Grim. And at that time, he was one of the lead sellers online for that kind of product. And it was different 10 years ago than it is today, obviously. He was sort of the number one source to get information, and he had direct contacts with Flair and with major manufacturers at the time. So I was buying wrestling cards from him. We were communicating fairly regularly, and he'd often mention that it's too bad there isn't such a thing as a price guide. And just the
Mm,
timing of it was very fortuitous because a friend of mine opened up a bookbinding business. So I was able to sort of do a test run of books, collaborating with Grim to get the prices together on everything up until that point.
mm,
And then a couple of years later, we decided it didn't make sense to carry on with the book. So we created the website, and the website picked up everything in the book and then just carried on from there, listing all prices on everything. And we're one of the most comprehensive websites for wrestling trading cards now, insofar as all the sets that we've listed and the information that we provide.
nice. Are you I didn't thank you for sharing that story. Definitely provided some insight to who you were and the knowledge that you possess. Are you the person who has the Hulk Hogan NWO WCW card?
Yes, sir. This was a very interesting week for those cards.
I
If you look
see
behind
that.
me here, there's 6,000 odd wrestling cards here. And
Those are wrestling cards in those books.
all those miners are all wrestling cards that I've collected over the years. And I'm not a
Wow.
new collector. I've been collecting as we've been going along. So I would have bought those WCW autographs back in 2002, 2003, not now when they cost a fortune. But yeah, imagine my surprise this week. First of all, the week started with a Booker T card, which is a very rare example card from that autograph set.
I
And
seen
it got
that.
all of us spinning because we knew that it was going to be several $1,000s. And that actually landed at just a bit over 5,300 US yesterday. But midweek, I got a email, as I do from often from other collectors around the world that go on my site on a regular basis. And this guy said, I'd like to make you an offer on your Hogan. And I said, okay. And it was 2000
Like
US.
in person, you all were in person.
No,
You
no,
was
no, I've
this
never met the
online?
dude.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, not even this way. This was just an email from somebody
okay.
that it goes onto the Wrestling Card Price Guide site, uses it, is aware of who I am, is aware of my collection. When you go onto my site and you look at the prices, a lot of the listings have videos, what we call flip throughs, where you can go through and see the entire set that's been videoed. So a lot of people go through, and from there you can see basically what I've got. And he found the Hogan, and it's a rare version of it. And he offered me $2,000, and I thought about it. I said no, because I've got the 103, all of them, the rest of them. So why would I want to take out the centerpiece, the main one?
Mm,
I didn't think much about it. Then the next morning, I responded to him, "Hey man, thank you very much. It's very generous, but I think I'm gonna have to pass." You know, and I'm not so wealthy that I could just afford to throw away $3,000. But it's just, this is a labor of love over 20 years. Next day, he comes up to $3,000. So it's like, man, you know, but I said no again. And then I was looking at some pricing. What I've been doing recently is I go on to sites like 130 Point and Watch Sold, and these are sites that you can type in a card name and they'll give you the last 90 days of eBay transactions. So it's very accurate. You can get a definite sense of market. And I use that periodically to update my sites, because my site, it gives you a low and a high, and it's not exact. It's a guide. It's not a Bible. And the
right,
problem
right,
is,
right.
Gary, is that over the last 9 years, the prices have skyrocketed. So what I
Mm,
might have priced something at last summer, it's now that could effectively be doubled. So it's not really a good indicator.
mm.
I was just going on there and checking out some more of these WCWs, and I found a Savage that sold for $2,000 2 weeks ago. I found an Eddie Guerrero that sold for $1,000, and Elizabeth for $1,000. So we're talking like 10 grand in raw, ungraded cards, and these are 5 of the 103 that are out there.
From
So I put out a
the
tweet last night saying, "Is this now indeed the greatest set of all time?" We always talk about the All Stars from '82, but you know those are mostly in high are graded cards. People
this is
tend to grade into stuff.
you're referring to that 1998 set or
Yeah, I'm referring to
1999.
what? Yeah, the 1988, 1999. There was 3 WCW sets that had the autographs in them, and over the course of those 3 sets, there was 100. There was 99 regular autographs put into packs. Then there was 4 more that were the wrestlers didn't sign, but they found their way into the secondary market later. Guys like Tony Vella, for example, had the Rey Mysterio brick, which a brick is just a bunch of cards, and he actually got Rey to sign them, and then he got them to market. And then there's another 4 that are virtually impossible to get. Although the Booker came up this week, it's the Booker, the Hardcore Hack, and the Davey Boy Smith.
Mhm.
And then the ultimate card is the Ric Flair. Now that's my holy grail of wrestling cards. I don't believe there's a more desirable card out there. To our knowledge, there's just one of them. We saw it come up in 2005. Jimmy Hart was involved with his son in brokering the deal,
Mhm.
and we have since found out that Ric Flair has admitted more than once to signing that one card, but he'd never seen another one. So
Mm.
that card ungraded could be a $20,000 card for
Or
all,
more,
all we
or more.
more. Absolutely,
And then I
absolutely.
mean, and God bless Ric Flair, but he doesn't have a limited time left.
Yeah,
Afterwards, it could
yeah,
shoot up even higher than that.
precisely. Yeah,
Yeah. So, well, thank you for that. So aside from Twitter, I'm on Instagram too, and I want to make sure
yeah,
I provide value to the wrestling art community in which I exist in on Instagram.
right,
So with me, I do a lot of art. I have artwork that I'm working on currently right now, and one of the things that I wanted to do is I'm glad that I actually met you because I believe that this correlates very well, at least to my from my understanding as I've been progressing through my journey with the Rolling Pin podcast, is pricing my art. And I look at the wrestling sports cards in particular, and I look to competitively price my art
right.
against the wrestling sports cards. So I mean, and this is just not necessarily for me, but to anybody out there who might be struggling with just pricing. And this is what led me to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's
Um,
it's 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 a tricky business pricing,
yeah,
whether it be arts, whether it
it,
be
it
trading cards.
it's almost similar.
Yeah, sure. And when you get into the world of high art, for example, which has always been the purview of the rich, people trade paintings for millions and millions of dollars. So, you know, what makes one painting worth $1 million or 50 grand more? And that's
Or a
really what the
card.
market will bear, and who your purchaser is and who your seller is. Now in sports cards, it's a little different because we got eBay. And
Mhm.
that's where the majority of stuff gets traded. So as I mentioned earlier, you can actually go onto eBay, and this is recent over the last, I don't know, it's a couple of years, last year, but they do make this data available that we can search souls. So I can pull up a very particular. I could pull up the the rock sticker that got the big bucks, and I could see how many of them have actually traded on eBay. And then where there's a variation, then you can take an average. Like if I got 5 All-Star Hogans and they're in around raw $500 or $400, you can get close.
Hmm.
When we did it originally, it was tougher. That's why I relied on Grim, because he was the man at the time, and he
Hmm.
basically did all the starting prices. And then my experience just being a collector, having bought them and knowing what I paid for them. So again, the last thing I'd like to do is claim to be the authority on prices on wrestling cards. But I've written a book, and I've run a site for 10 years, and we're trying to get as close as we
Yeah,
can.
I'm not. I don't want to. And that's why I'm here. I don't want to. Don't discredit your own knowledge, because
Right.
writing the book is a monumental thing. You know what I mean?
Well, getting it out there, just being the one to
And
take that step.
what you have behind you is monumental as well. So, I want to ask. I want to ask you this: looking at art and
Yeah.
looking at cards. Now, there are some differences, but there are also some similarities. Let me ask you this question, because you've been in the hobby for so long. What are the key characteristics or the qualities or the components that make up a high valuable sports card, wrestling sports card? Like what?
Now there's a lot of factors.
Mhm,
Usually how rare the set is where it starts.
mhm,
Obviously, how old the set is, the condition of the cards is very important, and then obviously the performer himself. Right? There's a handful of guys like Hogan and Austin and Savage and Sting and the top guys. Really, Hogan, Flair are the big ones,
mhm,
um, but certainly Rock and Austin.
mhm,
Those guys are going to be worth more, and it's all those factors that go
mhm,
into it. But rarity, like some sets were in limited release, so like
mhm,
that Booker got a lot of money yesterday because we don't have any idea how many there were. That might be the only one for all we know. It might be a half a
mhm,
dozen, right? So it's a bunch of things like when you talk about art, it's obviously very subjective. Now, does the quality of the art or the graphics of the wrestling card affect its price? Maybe.
mhm.
Some collectors might like the look of a price. Like, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with Jeff 75 Kings. He
I'm
did
not
that.
familiar with Jeff. Oh, actually, I've seen 75 Kings. I've engaged with him several times on
Yeah, I
Twitter.
don't know if you can see it. It's up there, but he did the the All Stars, but computer generated, and I thought that set was fantastic. It was one of the nicest sort of innovative approaches to set design that I'd seen in a while. A
Mhm,
lot of indie stuff too, Gary.
mhm,
There's a couple of young artists that do stuff for GCW wrestling and stuff like that,
mhm,
and the cards are phenomenal, right? But so
mhm,
it's all these things that sort of interpolate together to give you a price of the card. But like I said at the beginning, it's not an exact science, because what a card might trade for today, it could trade for 20% more or less tomorrow, all things equal.
I got you. Yeah, the one thing I've been noticing, just I mean, I guess in the midst of this pandemic, is just people collecting sports cars similar to how they would collect contemporary art,
Yeah.
which led me to just jump in and I'm not gonna say go against sports cars, because I actually collect sports cars too, because I actually enjoy it, and it's allowed me to meet so many of you. But just looking at the art in general, and just pricing, I guess my way of looking at it, or my outlook, or my perspective on pricing the art and how I look at the sports cars, just to provide you some insight, is when I look at it, I just say, okay, well, a sports card is a photo.
Yeah.
It's not anything that's created from the mind and put out on the canvas or anything like that. So when it comes to rarity, you can only make one piece of art that belongs to you. You can't even replicate it again if you try to paint it over again.
It's unique. Yeah.
So I guess what it really comes down to, and I thought that this would be similar to sports cars, is just branding. Um, are do sports cars have to receive some sort of branding in order to receive the popularity that it has? Is that one of the key components, or is it more so like who picks and chooses which card is where placed where? You know what I mean?
Insofar as the overall value of it, because
Yeah, like
value,
who?
you have to talk about it over time, you see, because a card will come out today, but we don't know how valuable it's going to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now. And when you talk about appraising art, again, it's a very subjective subject, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people use art as a means of hiding money, cleaning money, so
Mm-hmm.
you can exaggerate the value of these things.
I got
With
you.
respect to branding, like we have some sort of major brands like Topps and Flair that have put out product over the years. But that doesn't mean that an independent set won't get popular as well, you know. And like, say for example, there's some young performer out there now that's working with some indie fed, and he's the next
Mhm.
rock, but we don't know that yet. And a card comes out of him today when he's virtually unknown. Well, 10 years from now, that could be the most valuable card in the entire universe, you know. That,
Got you.
and that, so not meaning to evade your question
No,
or
no, no.
be
This is
elusive
perfect.
about it, but it's not an exact science with art or sports cards, really.
Mm,
Now, once you get into grading, you know, that certainly tries to get it closer, you know, but there's such a variation, not only from the different companies, whether you go to PSA or Beckett or some of these new companies or this Canadian company here called KSA, it's not consistent. So I might have a gem mint 8 that might get graded as a 6 somewhere else.
hmm.
Or, you know, a lot of people believe only in PSA because they have the registry. They do most of the vintage stuff. And 100%, like if you're looking to sell your cards and maximize your value, then you got to get it graded by PSA.
I
That's
got you.
you know. So talking in that regard with branding, that can help you maximize your dollars. But I can't possibly begin to price stuff that's graded
Yeah, I
because the
understand.
variation, you know.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
all I do is I look at raw cards.
Yeah.
Even parallels are tricky, right? We used to have a rule, well, if it's a first level parallel, times it by 1.5, and if it's this, times it by that. But even that's out the window now because Topps makes so much stuff now that a lot of it isn't as valuable, even the parallel stuff,
Got
you
you.
know. So it's
Yeah.
hard.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. And I want to say this to all the wrestling sports card collectors who are listening, who might be tuning into the Rolling Pin podcast. I do value, the conversations that I do have with them, and you included, because just looking at both industries, I guess art and sports cards, you understand value of something that somebody else might not understand true value
Right.
to. So it's easy to have these conversations in a parallel type of
Yeah.
situation where people can look at it and say, well, this is nice. You know what I mean? They can understand the rarity and
But remember, Gary, it's a basic premise, whether it's
Mhm,
sports cards or whether it's real estate or an automobile. It's what will the market bear? You know,
mhm,
I use this with my real estate clients a lot. That's what I do for a living. Um, you know, say you want a red Porsche, and your heart's set on a red Porsche, and you go to the dealership and they go, "Oh, we got 4 black ones here, but you want a red one."
mhm,
And the red one comes in and it's 15 grand more than the rest of them,
mhm,
right? Are you going to pay it? If you really
mm,
want a red Porsche, you're going to pay it.
yeah, yeah. If you
Really
really
want a
wanted
Hulk
it that
Hogan card for
bad,
three
yeah,
grand, if you really want a Hulk Hogan card, you're going to offer some guy across the world 3 grand for it. You
I
know what I
got
mean?
you.
So a
I
lot
got
of it
you.
has
I
to do
got you. Yeah, I
with
like it.
buyer demand, supply, but really, you know, um, like the All Stars, for example, because it's a limited set, you know, and there's not a lot of them, and the lion's share of them have been graded, and they sit in just a couple of guys' collections. You know, there's value there, right?
Mhm,
Whereas the recent top stuff, like they could put out 9, 10 sets a year, and some of these base cards are worth pennies, and they'll
mhm.
always be worth pennies. It's like stuff from the junk wax era, where a lot of stuff got made, almost too much. You know, you saturate a market with too much product, and that affects the value.
Got you.
That's why, really, from modern day stuff, there's value in some modern day stuff, but most of the stuff that has real value, like the Booker and the Hulk Hogan and the Rock Sticker and the all
Age.
the
It's
82
about
stuff,
age.
that's where the big
Mhm.
dough is.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, this is a great conversation. I really do appreciate you coming on. So let me ask you this:
My pleasure.
um, being that you are a car collector, um,
Yeah, I'm a collector first,
yeah,
you know, an
definitely.
archivist collector first, and
Yeah.
then the guy that
So,
put out the price guide second, you know.
no, definitely. So, being that you are a car collector, um, uh, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing your situation in a way that, with you being a collector of sports cars, it would, I guess it would be easier for you versus somebody else to be a collector in wrestling art. Not necessarily saying that I'm trying to sell you anything, but what I'm asking is, what would it take for a sports car collector, or just somebody who understands value like yourself, to look at art in the same way to say this is worth something? Like,
It wouldn't take much because first and foremost, I'm a wrestling fan, right? As a
okay,
kid, I started watching wrestling and I fell in love with it. And I said, this is for me. And I was like 7, 8 years old. And now I'm in my early 50s and it's never not been there. You know,
got you.
I live my life through music and wrestling, honestly. All my memories are tied to, oh, what was the WrestleMania that year? What records were we? I play bass as well. I'm in a band. So music and wrestling for me has been sort of my loves and my hobbies. And because of that, you know, because I was just into the product, I started collecting cards. But uh, I do art, you know. I never got into figures. A friend of mine has a massive collection, and they're just crazy as we are in the card business with the figures.
I see.
There's tons of stuff out there, and big bucks going for all of it now. And it's not just wrestling, right? Obviously, with the pandemic, there's just been a huge boost in collectibles and memorabilia in general because they're tangible.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
tangibility.
People are talking about fractional ownership and NFTs and all that stuff, right? These are physical, tangible, fungible cards.
I got you. I got you. Yeah, that's so. Going into NFTs real quick because I actually been studying up on NFTs.
Yeah, we all have because it came up all of a sudden. None of us knew what it was 2 weeks ago, and then it
Right.
was everywhere. So we all had to scramble
It's
and figure out, okay,
forcing,
what's going on with this? You know what it
and
is?
this is going back to the art and the sports cars. It's forcing our
Right.
industries to pay attention to it because we can benefit from it.
Right.
Um, I guess like what is your knowledge of NFTs as it relates to sports cars?
As
And
much
if
as
you,
anyone else's. When they first came around, I said, "Oh, this is interesting." When crypto first rolled around and blockchaining, I learned about that. But really, this is Wild West territory, and where it is now with respect to what might happen with sports cards. Look, Gary, I believe that eventually digitizing assets is going to become commonplace, but we're not there yet. I
Mhm.
think that we might. I don't even think that we're in the experimental phase. I think we're in the guinea pig stage where people are just trying to figure out what's what. And people are buying like WWE put out NFTs with some Undertaker
I seen that
memorabilia
on
and
WrestleMania.
100 grand for this, and then stuff selling out. Um, there's going to be a market there, and it's going to be a thing. It's not for me yet. I collect physical, like even I missed out on the whole rock thing
Yeah.
last month because I don't do stickers. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I didn't mean to interject, but they what I've been throughout my studies, I've been seeing that you can actually create non fungible tokens for tangible items as well. So I guess
Yeah, sure.
right.
The
So
NFT is just a certificate of authenticity. It just basically verifies that, hey, what you got is legit.
right.
So if I say this is an Undertaker urn carried by the man the first time he walked on television, the NFT is that verification that in fact that's the case,
Right.
right?
But they don't necessarily have to hold the actual earn.
No,
Right.
no.
So this doubles your probability of one, I guess, a sale, and you can still have the actual earn while somebody actually has the digital version of the earn.
Well, it's like
You know.
fractional ownership, right? You and I can both buy a piece of Michael Jordan's rookie, right?
Hmm.
We don't physically have the card. We have an image of it on our phone, and you can say truthfully that you own it as a co-owner of the card. And that's a new form of collecting that some of the people in our hobby are quite enjoying. They're having fun with it. Again,
Yeah.
not for me.
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
into
I mean, it's
shipping
definitely
fungible
gonna be
card, but
beautiful though, as
yeah,
technology
yeah, man.
advances and whatnot. And we
Sure. As
start moving.
well, look at what's happened with custom cards. For example, technology allows guys to print their own cards now. Like you make your own art. There's a couple of guys in our hobby that do their own card series. Now we get into legalities and who has the rights to make what, and are they cheating on any licenses? But this shit is happening.
Hmm.
Stuff is being made out there, and I do miss some of it because some of it is really cool. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. Wow. So I guess going back to that Hulk Hogan card, just to switch up the subject and switch it back to the card that you currently possess that's worth, diamonds. What will it what price do you have? Do you have a price in mind on
It's
that
funny. My
card?
wife and I were talking about that because what would it take? Because wives, and when it comes to dollars,
Yeah.
um, uh, it's very hard, Gary, because I've got 103 cards from that set that I collected over the years. Although most of it back then, when it was easier to get, because there's been guys that are trying to collect that stuff now, and not only do they have to pay a fortune, but it's very hard to find all of it. But like if someone said, here's 15 grand, I think I'd have to be out of my mind to say no to that. That just off the top of my head. But
Yeah.
here's the problem, dude. I've never sold a card, you see. So if I don't have two of them, I keep it. And I've stuck to that over all these years. We're talking 25 plus years that I've never actually sold something. So now when the market is going through the roof, everyone's saying, oh, time to cash out. Well, it's not so easy for me to cash out. First of all, I got a lot of products. Second of all, none of it is graded. So really, if I intended to maximize my investment, I'd have to go get it all graded and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
grading right now,
That's true.
it's a bit of a shit show, excuse my language, because you got to wait like 9 months. You got to pay through the nose. In fact, PSA stopped taking submissions. So
Yeah.
again, you really need to be patient and understand that, all right, if I want to max out, then that's the way to go. But you're not very liquid. You're not going to sell that car tomorrow,
Yeah. I was
right?
wondering too, like we'll have that guy over there ask him to buy that car for $3,000. Like I guess he might be a Hulk Hogan fan or whatnot. I'm
Well, he
just
might be a Hogan fan, or he might be like me. He might have every other card except that one.
yeah,
We never
that's
got
true.
into it really.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
and he could just be a guy with big bread, and that's what Gary has been happening is that, guys like me and you aren't paying $50,000 for a card.
Mm-mm.
Always pay, like LeBron James and his buddies. They're buying cards. I've seen a lot of NFL players holding up the Bumblebee Rock, as a sort of status symbol, and you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing that like a garden door or gnome that people are saying, "Hey, I got the rock." So it becomes a bit of a contest amongst these guys to see who can get what, right?
And this is so similar. This is so similar to art because
Yeah,
people
man.
in the art industry do the same exact thing.
Exactly.
You get
Exactly.
that
Because
piece.
everyone knows what everybody has. And it becomes, oh, you got the latest this artist. I want one of those. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it becomes very much that. And don't forget that there's a lot of people with bread, with money, that are stuck at home. So they can't go out for nice meals and they can't go out for shows and they can't hop on an airplane and go to Vegas and gamble away their money. And
Right.
we're talking about very high net worth individuals. Steve Aoki is one of the biggest DJs in the world. He's been buying $10,000 cards like they're going out of style, right? And he's been telling other DJs and football players. And then you talk about guys like Gary Vee and his social circle of people that like sports cards and understand their future investment value.
Mm-hmm.
And these are
Yeah.
high net worth individual; they can afford. So they've obviously pushed the value of this stuff up.
Mm. So let me ask you this: for the common sports card
Yeah.
collector, someone who's not as who doesn't have an extensive collection, who's looking to get into the hobby, because there are people who are listening to this who might be at the ground level, who might be
Mhm.
looking to get some stuff, and I want to make sure I help them out, including
Yeah.
myself, in case I run across a fucking card that I might see and I'd be like, I need to get that. What should we be looking at? What car should we be looking to purchase right at this
Well,
moment? Or like,
this has gotten talked about a lot recently amongst
mhm,
podcasts and videos that we've done in the hobby. What's the right way to collect? Is it like I I I have an extensive collection of every base set, and that's the way I collected from way back when, and I've continued to present day. Some people, they're only integrating cards and finding the best of the best, the nicest quality, the most pristine cards, getting them off to PSA, right? That gets expensive quick though.
yeah,
There are what we call player collectors, people that just collect Kurt Angle, just collect Daniel Bryan, right? Then there are some people that just want to collect the vintage stuff. So
hmm
really what I'm getting at is what are you into? Now, obviously, if you're into Hogan, you're into Rock. Rock is hugely popular now with the show. But like Rocky Johnson, his father's card has gone up 3, 4 times just because of the Rock's popularity. So really, there's no right answer to this.
hmm
I can't say this is the right way to collect wrestling cards because really this is a hobby and it's meant to be for fun. Yeah.
hmm
So
right,
you do whatever it is that gives you enjoyment. It's
yeah,
not supposed to be a stressful thing. It's supposed to be something that you enjoy doing. Since I was a kid, I've been into wrestling. I used to up here in Canada where I'm mad about hockey. So my father used to bring me home little packs of hockey cards, and I learned about opening packs and that stuff.
that's what's up.
And I sold all my hockey cards at one point, but kept the wrestling because I was into it, and it just grew from there. That's a long
Mm.
time ago.
Yeah, that's what's up, man. Thank you for
So
sharing
whatever
that.
whatever people are into, like it's the hobby's for fun. So
Mhm.
make sure that whatever you're getting into, like some people are trying to maximize how can I make money off this, and that's fine.
Right.
If you want
hmm
to come into the hobby and try and be smart about it and figure a way that you can make a few bucks, that's great. I've never looked at wrestling cards that way.
Yeah.
I like
It
wrestling. I
just turned.
collected the cards for me.
Yeah, and this, I guess, in this new era that we live in, people are looking for alternative investments, outside of stocks and bonds. You know that
A lot
do
of
add,
people are hurting.
yeah, that do add fun to the enjoyment. Like for myself, like I have a Charlotte Flair PSA 10, and it just it
Nice.
helps me engage with wrestling a little bit more. Like I like to watch now. I'm watching Charlotte Flair
Yeah,
with a different lens. You know what I mean? I'm seeing the growth
exactly.
and watching
Exactly.
it. You know,
And
versus
that's the enjoyment you get out of it. You being an artist as well, you're probably going to have that sort of aesthetic to the
yeah,
hobby.
yeah,
But wrestling cards isn't as big as baseball or hockey up here. But I'll tell you honestly, Gary, over the last 6 months, it's maybe 9 months, um, it's gotten a lot of traction. And it's again through efforts like you, like doing this and talking about wrestling cards. Because a year ago, where did you go to find out about wrestling cards? You come to my site, you go to wrestlingtradingcards.com, and there wasn't a lot. But
mm,
now you've got your podcast. There's a couple other ones that are quite good.
thank you.
And it's all great. I think it's all a sort of cumulative effect of all of us putting the word out there. And then casual collectors are like, oh, I didn't know wrestling was a thing. I didn't know you could get this and get that. Rock is mainstream now, so
Yeah.
that's going to help.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. I really do appreciate it. I guess for everybody who's listening, Paul, if you have something that you want to say to card collectors and art creators, if you have anything that you want
Yeah,
to
well,
add or say, feel free.
enjoy yourself. I reckon that you do your art because it's a creative expression, but it's something you enjoy doing. Similarly with collecting, you know, there's a lot of information that we've put out there over the last little while, and digest it and then figure out what's best for you.
Thank
Like a
you.
lot of people, for example, jumped aboard the Panini sticker because that was something. Oh, there's an element of surprise. It's new territory. What are we going to make on this thing? How is it going to go? A lot of people like that excitement as well, right? So it all
Hmm.
depends on what you're into, right?
Thank you, Paul. It was great having you. Um, I'm hoping that you will be
Oh, my
back.
pleasure.
I'm hoping that you'll be back. I
Yeah, I'd love to.
find your information very valuable. And it's nice to know for everybody who's listening that you're not lost. Paul is a great guy. You can always reach out to him if you have any questions in regards to
Yeah,
sports
please. And
cards.
anyone that's into wrestling cards, check out thewrestlingcardpriceguide.com. Again, we've got listings going back to 1888. We've got Japan that we did this year. We have the largest collection of indie sets, and myself and a very close friend of mine, Chuck, who has an extensive collection like I do. Him and I work very closely, sort of um, being the archivist guys, making sure that everything is mentioned and mentioned correctly.
Mm,
But please do check out my site. Certainly come back and check out Gary's site here. So like I say, these podcasts are fantastic to bring in tons of knowledge to the hobby.
thank you.
And it's great that you're spending the time and the energy to do this for us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. That was Paul from Wrestling Price Guides. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming again. We really do appreciate you. And I hope
My
you
pleasure.
stay safe in Canada,
Will
most
do.
importantly.
We'll see you again soon, Gary. Thank you.
No problem. Peace.